Welcome to Season 4 of the Lehigh Valley Arts Podcast, where we explore the local arts culture and community in the Lehigh Valley.
We'll be doing this through conversations with individual artists, administrators, musicians, poets, actors, and arts and cultural organizations. We'll discuss all types of mediums with the goal of enriching local arts culture. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Lehigh Valley Arts Podcast. My name is Ben, and today we are having a very special conversation with the artist, educator, administrator, father, and friend known by many as Danny Moyer. If you were confused or curious about the name of this episode when you first clicked on it, I promise that by the end of today's episode, it will all come together. Danny Moyer was born in Northeast Philadelphia and raised in Central Connecticut, but Easton, Pennsylvania is where he is called home for most of the last 25 years. After rewarding experiences in the art program of his public high school in 1990, he majored in art education at Southern Connecticut State University and never left the art classroom again. In 1993, he continued studying fine art at Bucks County Community College before finishing his degree and teaching certification in 1996 at Kutztown University. Soon after his schooling, he began teaching and creating art for exhibition. Connections Art Gallery in Easton, Pennsylvania was where he first brought his work to sell. With success and support from Robin Porter, the original owner of the gallery, he was invited to have his first solo exhibition in 2000, followed by shows in 2004, 2008, and 2012. He continues to exhibit through Connections Gallery regularly in their seasonal exhibitions. After joining several local arts organizations and contributing work to open calls around the valley, Jim Toya invited him to have a studio space and be a visiting artist in Lafayette College's Williams Visual Art Building in 2004. 20 years later, Lafayette College has continued to be a large part of his art education. 2005 brought him to the Banana Factory, where he was a resident artist. As his family grew, another change was necessary. He built a home with a studio in Pen Argyl, Pennsylvania, to raise his children and be near his in-laws. Traveling a little further, he continued to participate in the Lehigh Valley art scene, group exhibitions at Lehigh University, Lafayette College, Kutztown University, Northampton Community College, the Banana Factory, the New Arts Program of Kutztown, the Cheltenham Arts Center in Philadelphia, the Allentown Arts Museum, and many more kept him engaged, not only in his painting practices, but also in developing video and installation art as well. During this time, he continued graduate studies at University of the Arts in Philadelphia. 2013 brought more changes alongside a relocation to Easton. He opened Bank Street Studios and moved downtown. His installation work was in the Boom exhibition, located in the Alpha Building in Easton in 2014, which was an invitational exhibition that ushered in the beginning of Brick and Mortar Art Gallery. The solo exhibition followed at Brick and Mortar in 2015 as they invited him to show regularly until their close. He began framing for several local artists at this time as well. He decided to move out of the downtown area and moved to his basement on College Hill, transitioning Bank Street to Dank Street. Around this time, he served as the board chair and president of the Arts Community of Easton, also known as ACE, and started as the coordinator of the Young Masters Wall for the Carl Sterner Arts Trail. Outgrowing the basement of his home, it was time again for a change. COVID was among us, and he decided in October of 2020 to join the artists of 1120 Butler Street. Through his studio practice, he wants to make art that make people feel as good as he does when he sees work that he likes. He likes to use every tool he sees fit to communicate visually with people who are open to seeing how he feels. In addition to being an artist, he has been teaching for the Whitehall-Coplay School District full-time, serving as a drawing teacher, graphic design teacher, and director of the Zephyr Art Gallery at Whitehall High School. He has received awards in art education from Kutztown University, Lehigh Valley Arts Council, and the Scholastic Arts and Writing Organization. He has two daughters, Mattia, a focused 20-year-old communications major at Bloomsburg University, and Gigi, a considerate junior who cheers for Pen Argyl High School. He has a wonderful partner, Christy Boole, who is a photographer and music trivia master, and Stella, who he calls the best dog ever. Before getting into Danny's interview, here are a few words from other Lehigh Valley community members about who Danny Moyer is to them. Kicking us off is Marianne Riker.
I first met Danny through his work at Connections Gallery in downtown Easton. But Danny has been such an influence on my own creative process, and he's such a great person, a great artist, and a great friend that I thank him for all that he's done for the arts community in the Lehigh Valley and as an art teacher. And I just really enjoy Danny's work, but most of all, he has such a great personality and is such a giving, kind-hearted soul. Thanks, Danny.
I'm Anthony Smith, and these are the things that Danny Moyer are to me. He's a friend, he's a mentor, he's an advisor, and he's one of my biggest cheerleaders.
Hey, my name's Doug Boehm. I have known Danny Moyer for over 20 years, and we were introduced in the early 2000s. And at that point, we had traded paintings, traded artwork, and we'd been fans of each other's art, following each other's art, being supportive of each other's art since. The thing about Danny, his art is just incredibly consistent. He's one of the most prolific Lehigh Valley artists that I know. And he's a huge fan of the Lehigh Valley arts community. I think he's been at just about every art opening that I've been to over the last bunch of years. And not only art openings, but also musical performances. I've seen him at lots of musical performances. And that's something that him and I share, the passion for art and music. So I am a huge Danny Moyer fan.
My name is Giancarlo DeMarchi. I'm a painter living and working in Pennsylvania. I've been asked to say something about my friend Danny Moyer, who's at times been more than a friend, a contemporary, a confidant, and very much an advocate of my work. Somebody I confide in and talk about my ideas with. Real easy person for me to talk to. I think for a lot of the artists that he knows who are his contemporaries, he's advocated for them as well. He also is an advocate for his students. A great person to know if you're a creative. Danny's work is very layered, multifaceted, process-driven work. Goes through many changes, and I've had the pleasure of being in his studio and discussing his processes and ideas. It's safe to say I'm a fan of his paintings, drawings. Definitely an inspiration for me to try new ideas. I mean, I've certainly gained a lot from by having the opportunity to know Danny and share my work with him and have him share his work with me.
Hi, my name's Pete Mays, and I'm the principal of Whitehall High School in Whitehall, Pennsylvania. I'm happy to share a message about one of our amazing teachers, Danny Moyer. Danny Moyer is not only an art teacher who inspires his students through drawing and graphic design, but he also manages our art studio and makes sure that our students always have opportunities to be exposed to brand new and current artists to inspire their work as they go through school. We are so lucky to have him on our faculty.
This is Kate Hughes, and I have a passion for collecting work of artists in and around the Lehigh Valley. I want to talk about Danny Moyer. Really enjoy his work so much. I love the colors, the lines. And what's so interesting to me is when you look at his work the second, third, fourth time around, you always see something new. I'm not sure exactly how he does that. And I love that he draws from everyday things, billboards, advertising. You can really see the influence in his work. So proud that we are able to have Danny Moyer in our community in the Lehigh Valley, and absolutely cannot wait to see what he does next.
My name is Todd Frankenfield, and I met Danny in 2014 while filming an art documentary. Danny is someone that always seems to know how to push people in the right direction. I've gone to Danny many, many times seeking advice or an opinion on something I'm working through, and he's never made me feel like what I'm asking is wrong or not worth his time. He sees the best in people. He always has something nice to say. I think the world needs more people like that, people like Danny.
Hey there, this is DJ Brad Scott coming at you from the heart of Lehigh Valley. I'm all about spinning beats and throwing those wild events to keep the dance floors alive. But you know what really keeps me going? My buddy Danny Moyer. He's not just an artist, he's a friend with a heart of gold, always rocking the best tees with those powerful social justice messages. That's how I knew Danny was more than just a mate. He's a great man through and through.
Hey, this is Al Johnson, mixed media artist. Danny Moyer is, well, I always thought of myself as being a kind of a Robin Hood amongst other artists. I always thought of Danny as being kind of my little John. He's the guy who just happens to know just where everything and how everything should go because he's so down to earth. He's a really great artist, a great dad. I communicate with him on so many different levels. I mean, it's just a kindred spirit to me, and definitely to many others. Danny is very, very vital to my work. He plays a very important role in my work over the last few years, and I'm glad that I can share this with you about my brother, Danny Moyer.
Hi, my name is Anthony Marasini. I am the manager and curator of Connections Gallery here in Easton, Pennsylvania. I have known Danny Moyer since 1998, I believe, when he was setting up his artwork in the Circle during the Creative Art Society's, I think they were Sundays arts pop-ups. He is an amazing artist and educator in the Lehigh Valley and just an overall good person and friend to me.
Danny, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Second time we're trying to record this episode. Had a small mishap with the first one, but I'm excited to have you back in the studio for more.
It's great to be back.
You do so much, and I really just want to dive right in. What made you want to become someone so engaged with the arts, especially as an art teacher?
I've always considered myself an artist, or I identified as an artist. I was into visual things very early, comic books and things like that. I mean, I could remember going to Kmart as a little kid, and I'd go to the album section and just look at the album covers, and that was great, just looking at pictures. I went to a parochial school that didn't really have a lot of art, and that was K-8. So art was really just a personal thing that I did at home on my own, drawing a lot. And again, from the Marvel comics and being inspired by that stuff. I went to a public high school that had an art program. And I remember walking into that classroom for the first time and seeing all the art on the walls and seeing the space and like asking, like, is this like the only stuff that's taught in here? And that just blew my mind as a kid. It was like, I've never been in an arts classroom. It was just, construction paper at your desk in my earlier years. I was just enamored and loved it and spent every single minute. If there was a study hall, I was getting passes to go to the art room. I whatever art classes were in the course catalog, I took all of them. And it was just a huge part of my high school career and growing up with that. And I knew by the end of my senior year that, like, one of those things I felt like I never wanted to leave. Like, it was like, this is the environment I need to be in. And I guess I have to go become an art teacher if I want to stay here. And then that way I could legitimately do that all day.
Yeah.
So that was the plan right out of high school. And I went to Southern Connecticut State University, and I enrolled in their art education program to get a bachelor's degree there. Took a lot of drawing classes, 2D design, 3D design, printmaking. And I had a great first 2 years taking a lot of studio classes there. I had some family things going on. I was actually born in Philadelphia, but at this point in my education, I'm up in Connecticut. My parents my father got transferred, so that's where I grew up. And here, 20 years later, my parents moved back to the Pennsylvania area, and I was in the middle of college, and I had 2 years in at Southern Connecticut State University, and my father had some health issues and asked if I'd come down and be around more. Yeah. So I left there, and they tried to convince me, and they're like, we don't care if you take all art classes, if you just jump into the community college here and just take art classes if you'll come down. And I was like, just take studio art classes. Okay. Yeah. So I went to Bucks County Community College, and that place blew my mind too. Great professors. This guy, Robert Dodge, was a drawing teacher I had. So many great artists. And they had a wonderful gallery there that they'd bring in, like, real, like, solid artists and that we'd learn from at the college. It was just great. It was just, I really had a great year there, really immersing myself in the fine arts. And it was great because it's like, being in Bucks County, I was going to like the New Hope area, Lambertville area, and looking at like the Bucks County Impressionists and like the early modernism. And there was like a lot of Sheeler work going on around there at the time. And I was so close that like I had a membership to the Philadelphia Museum of Art, and it was like great to go on road trips down there and go to First Fridays down there in Old City. And it was like, it was just a great, to be like 20, 21 years old in my education and still, studying art and immersing myself in that community. It was great. And I knew I wasn't going to stay there. And the goal was, again, to get that teaching degree. So I was going between Temple Tyler and looking at their art ed program, or going to Kutztown. Was someone at the college said, "Oh, there's this little town up in the way. If you want to check this out, it's kind of far, but it's And I checked it out, and I thought it was pretty awesome too. So I kind of looked at the two opportunities, and I ended up gravitating to Kutztown to finish my degree. And that was not a mistake either. I met a lot of great friends, a lot of great people, heard a lot of great music, and made connections that I still have to this day, going out to trying to show at the spaces that are out there and stuff like that. It's really great. I did a little more after Kutztown. I did some graduate work at University of the Arts and Kutztown. Took some printmaking classes down at UArts and some drawing classes down there that were really, really great. And that the Kutztown part is what got me to the Lehigh Valley. So I met someone and we got married, and she was from the Lehigh Valley. She was from Penargil. So after graduating, that's where I was at. And I was in Penargil for a very short time. And then we always found ourselves going to Easton. This is like 96. So Art de Magique, Deborah Rabinski had a gallery down where Tandoor Grill is right now. That used to be a really big art gallery.
Oh, very cool.
And I saw the work of Isidore Leduca and Sigafus, and it's just some serious heavy hitting art. And I was like, this is fantastic. Like I can come down 20 minutes to this little town, and there's these cool shops. There was the archive shop, was this great shop that these architects own. So like all the gifts and stuff in there, it just so tasteful. And I also started to get to know Lafayette College and go into openings that they would have for their shows. But it's pretty much Kutztown and love got me to the Lehigh Valley.
Nice.
And the art got me to Easton.
Yeah.
So
you said something really interesting there at the beginning, that when you were in high school, you spent a lot of time in the art classroom.
Correct.
And you said that like wanting to be in the art classroom is what made you want to become an art teacher. And I'm curious there, because that's a really distinct nugget of information. It's not, I want to be a studio artist. It's, I want to be an art teacher.
Well, I don't know. I just had such good experiences. I mean, it was like you're discovering who you are as a person.
Yeah.
You're going from adolescence to adulthood, and the conversations that you're having are around tables where you're sitting in the round, and the work that you're doing is visual and creative, and you're producing something. You're all producing something. You're not, you could say you're producing a paper. You're producing a record of 30 math equations that you successfully completed. You can, complete essays or produce essays, but like they don't have the same impact as creating images of things from reality or your imagination.
Sure.
And then the laughter and the joy that I felt as a learner, I felt like man, this dude's got it good, man. This is, you come to work and you're hanging out with us and you're giving us the prompts and you're evaluating our success and you're there when we are going through things and we share things. And there was a lot of Led Zeppelin tapes and different music and you know, it was like a shared boombox, and it was like, who brought a tape in that we could listen to, or what radio station are we going to argue over in the classroom? And like, I don't know. I just had such a, I don't know if it's that I was starved of it in my earliest years, that when I got to the high school and saw that, it was just like, this is the studio I want to be in forever. And it's like, it's all inclusive. It's like you're trying to cover all bases. Sure. It's not just one thing. And that, I guess that's the studio that I fell in love with, instead of thinking about like my own studio where I'm going to produce my work.
Which you still do now.
Which I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, I love that too. But like, I don't know if you gave me a debate on what space I like more, but if you, I know you were in my studio, but if you came out to my classroom, it wouldn't be that different.
Yeah.
It would not be that different.
Yeah. Well, and that was part of what prompted me to ask that question, is knowing that you actually do both, where that initial nugget of the art teacher coming first came from. And I think you answered that pretty well.
Yeah. That's just my experience. And, and I don't want to, you know, and it's being a teacher, it's like a fountain of youth too, because it's like, I don't know if I know I'm not the most mature 51-year-old, but that might be because I roll with 16-year-olds on the reg, as they would say. Ain't no capping, no cap. But like it's like, if that's who you're spending time with, it's like, that's who I'm spending time with.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
those are the conversations I'm having. Are not that different. It's just not Zeppelin. You know, it's Drake, or it's Lil Baby, or I try to put Wilco and Pavement on them, but like, it'll take a couple of years till they go, oh, that dude used to play this all the time.
Yeah,
you know? But you know, you can still get stuff in on a couple of them.
Well, I think that's a really good bridge. You had mentioned one teacher so far, but being a teacher yourself, what teachers throughout your life really left a lasting and positive impression on you?
Well, Sister Sabalda left some marks that I probably still have on some parts of my body with some rulers, but and she did leave a mark on me, though. I mean, it's funny. She did teach me some stuff about art. I could remember her seeing me like turning my arm around a paper to draw, and she was like, turn the paper, like, you control the art, you know, the art doesn't control you. And it was like, this is pretty cool coming from Sister Sabalda, you know. And then as far as high school, I could definitely say all my art teachers, and they were all very different. But I see that as a gift, that like, you know, you get different stuff from different people. Like, you can't hear it all from one. And so like, there's a special spot in what I do where I think of them, you know, often with certain things. And then as far as college goes, like I said, some great ones at Southern and at Bucks County, but at Kutztown, this gentleman, Dr. Tom Shantz, and Dr. Marilyn Stewart. Dr. Shantz, just the way he ran his classroom, the way information was displayed on the bulletin boards, it was like so visually clear what we're about to go through. Yeah. Like, I being a visual learner, like that, it was like, and his courses were more about like animation and media, and it got into advertising and ethics and recognizing things and criticism, and how to really appreciate what you're watching, what you're looking at, and what goes into it. But as a teacher, he was like my most influential model, and I think I still try to set some things up in my own classroom the same way he did back in the early 90s. And then Dr. Marilyn Stewart, she was just this very happy art lover and human lover. Like, she loved being in a room with a bunch of young college students talking about art just as much as the art. It was about the conversation. It was about, well, let's talk about this. Like, what does this think you think of? Or what are your experiences? And I could remember talking about being at a Metallica concert mosh pit and being at a Ramones mosh pit. And like I like wrote this essay on like the different types of mosh pits and the vibe of the music and the experience and the people. And she was so lit up on hearing about the dancing, and like would talk about how ritual and all this stuff is like bigger than us, and the interconnectedness of so many other things. And the look in her eye when we would have these conversations was so authentic that it was like, she really cares about it. And it just felt so good. And like, I signed up, she had so many classes it was called Criticism on the Go. Okay. This is like graduate level stuff. Yeah. And it would be like an all intensive set of weekends. And it would be like, oh, we're going to Storm King, and we're going to SUNY Purchase, and we're going to go through their galleries. And then, oh, we're going to DC, or, and it's, oh, I'll sign. Where is it this semester? Yeah, I'm signing up for those credits, and it was so great. Like, you would just really get in there, and then you'd all go out to eat afterwards and talk about the work you just saw, and just the smile on her face all the time and her energy, I just totally vibed with. And it was like, oh man, like this is, and all the art criticism stuff I do with my current students is right out of the stuff that we were doing. Yeah. And it's so ingrained in my head, and I feel like I'm just doing that to a new generation. Yeah. But I know it's valid. I believe in it, and I see its value not just in art criticism, but in general criticism of how you observe everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Dr. Marilyn Stewart and Dr. Tom Schatz for sure.
Nice. You've brought up your students quite a few times.
It's inevitable.
What do you find yourself learning from your students?
Jokingly before about the slang and stuff, it does feel good to still kind of keep it fresh. And I'm kind of like up on some music trends because of being with them, and you know, and I like some of it. So like I'm good with it. So being with them makes me feel younger. It makes me feel I'm excited to share with them the art that I come across, and I want to, for a lot of them, it's like I just assume too much that people know, oh, you know about Warhol, yeah, and they're like, who? And it's like, what do you mean who? And it's like, how do you not know that? And then it's like, oh wait, yeah, like Minecraft and TikTok, like they don't necessarily know about this, and it's like you can't assume, and I mean, we were just going over that, the block print, The Great Wave, and, and they're like, oh, I've seen that on stickers. I see this on this and that, and like the commercial use of it and everything, right? Sure. And then we talk about it, and we talked about like Japan and their border policies, and like, wait, what? Like they closed their borders to everybody. Yeah. And that was trade, that was everything, and you could be killed for leaving. Like you're like, that's how it is. And it's like interesting that it's like, and then this block print, which again, it's like for the people, because there wasn't art coming into Japan. So it was make art for the people of Japan, like and printmaking, logical. But like to think about border policies and issues of today, and hundreds of years ago, what was going on in other parts of the world with dealt with things and power struggles. And like, they talked about this great wave was going to be like, the demise was coming from the ocean, like meaning it could be not even the waves, but metaphorically for the Westerners, coming through. Yeah. But all this is like, these are the conversations we're having stemming from pretty popular
Yeah.
print that's on Target t-shirts.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Well, it's also incredible thinking about the impact that would have on American culture as it pertained to Japanese printmaking, with like the imports coming in and
Right.
the paper used to stuff those imports
Mhm.
being Japanese woodblock prints, and then people would order imports into the United States just to get these woodblock prints.
What I love is that like
Oh.
art is the trigger for the conversation.
Yeah.
So it's like these could be, I don't want to talk about that, or why is he bringing this up, or da 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 da. And it's like, yeah, but like it all relates to this, and it's
It
like,
does.
oh, whoa, wait, all right?
Yeah.
And it's like, what else can we look at? What else is going to trigger thoughts and ideas that
Yeah.
I had no idea? And like, so like, what I learned from them is, I learned all this stuff for I learn it because I'm teaching them.
Yeah.
And it's like, I get to continually be a student
Yeah.
because of them. And like, that's a gift. And I get to have these conversations, and it's like,
Yeah.
it brings joy to my heart. I don't resist going to work. I don't like getting up as early.
Sure.
Some people know that, but like, but the job itself, like, is so important and so valuable.
Mm.
And it's not just about the art, it's about the kids. So it's like,
Yeah.
what do I get out of it? Or what do they teach me? A popular saying, it is what it is. And I resist that. And I say, it's never what it is. And the kids taught me that. And the kids taught me that, like, there's always a backstory. So it's like, it's easy for anyone to observe someone and make a judgment call or an assessment. And it's like, yeah, but did you know this? And it's like, I didn't take that into consideration. And it's like, oh, so it's not how you thought it was. Like, it's not that way. It's like, there's more to this. And it's like, there's always more to this. And then that totally ties into art. And,
Sure.
And I was just at a what do I get out of the kids? Being a variable. I was just at an artist talk. I want to say Gabriel Rico is showing right now. Not that this will date the podcast or whatever, but he's showing at the Williams Center at Lafayette College. And I went to an artist talk. He's a Mexican artist, and he makes these giant installation math equations on the wall. And he doesn't use numbers. He puts objects in the spaces of the equation. And he challenged us to think about, how does an object define an object? And it's like, oh, wait, what do you mean? It's like, well, how would these glasses define this cell phone? Like, is it greater than, less than, equal to? Does it add, do they go together? Like chocolate and peanut butter, there'd be an addition sign, and so I'm looking at this artist's installations and listening to us talk about basically objects being substituted in for variables in the equations. And we had this deeper conversation about how we're all variables to all of our own equations, that like who we meet and like part of who we are, like, put me here, X equals, then what's on the other side of the equal sign? Like, what's the is what it is? Like, okay, if I is here, then what is on this side?
Yeah.
And when saying it's not always it is what it is,
Sure.
that math example is a clear example that it's not. That, like, this is X and this is square root, divided by, da-da-da-da. And then when you start putting in, objects or people or experiences in that equation, being a teacher, you're part of that equation. You're like, whatever they develop and become, the ones that came through your room that learned about criticizing art, and the ones that had those joyous conversations and some of those harder conversations, like, I get to be a variable in a lot of people's equations.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of equations out there, like a lot.
Absolutely. I was planning on holding off this topic until closer to the end of end of us chatting today, but I think it's so pertinent to what we're talking about now, and that's the Zephyr Gallery.
Mm-hmm.
And you had also mentioned toward the beginning of when we were talking today that the gallery that was at the college in Bucks County was really formative for you. And
incredibly formative.
I'm curious what kind of a connection there may be between...
Oh, definitely. There's definitely a connection. I feel bad saying this, but like my first 2 years at Southern Connecticut State University, I don't really remember a gallery being there. Like there was a place to hang work and see work.
Sure.
But I don't really recall a gallery space at the college. And forgive me, Southern, it was a long time ago, and it was my first 2 years of college, so maybe I wasn't the most observant at that time. But when I went to Bucks, that college was like the first, and you come into the art building, that was like the first room that you saw. And right out of the gate, it's like, this is not a classroom. This is a place to go look at work.
Yeah.
And sit down and look at that for a while, and learn from it. And they'd have artist talks and they would invite the art, so that definitely was a huge part. Kutztown did have a gallery.
Mm-hmm.
So Kutztown really followed through in my experience that it's like a 1-2 punch, that it's like, if that's what I got out of Bucks, I certainly got that out of Kutztown as well. And I would even say that gallery at Kutztown would be the impetus of me being a maker. Because when I was going for my undergrad at Kutztown and I'm finishing up my art ed stuff, and I was in school for quite a while. I never did poorly, but I moved a lot. So the transferring kind of, we'll give you the credits, but it doesn't count as the requirement. It's like, oh, great, I'll graduate with 1 million credits. But in all seriousness, like, I got to take a lot more studios than the average bear because of my experience and just moving around a bunch.
Yeah.
So for Kutztown, because they have a gallery, if you're an art major, communication design major, or an art ed major, there's a show at the end of right before graduation where you exhibit. And I kind of got the vibe from a lot of my peers that people were picking like their best project from their best class. Like, let me go through my portfolio, and this was the most successful watercolor painting I did in Dobbs class.
Sure.
And it's like, I just felt like this is a chance to show in a gallery. Like, I don't want to show the assignment. I don't want to show the thing I made when I was prompted with a set of rules.
Sure.
And I took that as an opportunity to just make my own mixed media pieces, because I feel like I didn't even know what I was doing, because I had all these different studio classes. It was like, what do I say I am at the end, So like I ended up like stretching these 2 canvases, and they were paintings. But then on the back of the painting, something got me all into the structure of the back, and I started collaging stuff back there. And there was like thin ceramic pieces and growing grass that like I planted grass seeds. So there was like plants involved, and there was just like this flat 2D painting on the front, and then all this busy 3D found object collage stuff on the back. And my one professor's like, how are you going to display that? And I was like, I'll hang it from the ceiling. So like I got ropes, and we suspended like these 2 paintings in the middle of the gallery space. And I had this feeling of pride that it was like, I came up with this. Like, this wasn't an assignment. Like, this is purely every weird notion that I have on what would be an interesting thing to look at, or to like, I know what as a maker, the joy I was getting out of looking at what I was making. And I guess I was essentially hoping that someone else saw what I saw and had the same triggered experiences. And that really was the beginning. Like, those were the first 2 paintings I've ever made that I'd call mine. Like, not a project.
Sure.
That all comes from that gallery.
Wow.
If that gallery wasn't there, if Kutztown didn't say this is a requirement for graduation, I don't know I don't know if that would have, I don't know if that's, I don't know. If that would be how it would work out, but I know how it did work out.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of it.
Wow.
Now the gallery at our school,
Yeah.
I know our first show was Doug Wiltrout, a phenomenal artist, tempera painter, out at the Banana Factory. He's been there from the start. He also is a Whitehall grad or resident and alumni. So he was the inaugural show, and it was really special because if you don't know Doug's work, he's got these monstrous, beautiful watercolor paintings from figures to still lifes. It's just all phenomenal to get to know his work. But in all these years, 10, 12 plus years, we've had at least 4 regional artists in a year. So like over that time, it's a very long list that I know I gave you a while ago.
Yeah.
But, Paul Deary, Isidore LaDuca, Adriano Farinella. I got Rigo Peralta just showed last year. Andrew Kish back in the day. Giancarlo DeMarchi. Jackie Lima had incredible work there. Charles Stonewall, Femi Johnson. It's been wonderful. I mean, one of the best, they're all such great experiences. Right now we're showing Tommy Petrella. Everyone's going bonkers over her landscapes. They're so beautiful. We had this wonderful artist named Chris Carter at the beginning of the year. She had these sketchbooks that were just so inspiring. Al Johnson, so many. Anthony Smith. Anthony had an incredible show a couple years ago. One that was really special for me. I mentioned it earlier. We talked earlier about Marvel Comics and comics being, a big thing for me.
Yeah.
The artist Scott Hanna works for Marvel and DC, and he's part of the Lehigh Valley region. I mean, he's a little closer to Bucks.
Yeah.
But he's a neighbor for sure, or Lehigh Valley adjacent. And I reached out to him, and he's like, "Sure, I'll exhibit. I'll exhibit there." And it was like, what? Like, and then like the work he brought was so phenomenal. And he had this one piece that was like a Black Panther cover, and like Black Panther's standing in the middle with his arms raised over a crowd of like white people coming and raging against him. And then it's like he shows me the history of this Conan the Barbarian comic, that it's like Conan but with savages, or whatever, and the bottom of his, and it was like such a beautiful like honor, like homage. And I think it was at Frazetta, maybe. I think it was off of Frazetta because he did some of the Conan stuff.
Yeah.
That illustrative work. And to see like the history of Frazetta, and then Scott Hanna, and then like I was all about comic books when I was young in school, and I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, like I have students that want to be cartoonists, and they're seeing Scott Hanna's work in their high school,
amazing.
And he came to talk about it, and it was like, I can't believe this is like a dream come true for me to see this stuff.
Yeah.
Growing up looking at X-Men and X Factor and Avengers and all that stuff, it's like it was like a kid in a candy shop, but like it was my candy shop. It was so amazing.
Yeah. Well, are there any other moments that really, just looking back, make you think, man, this is why we do this. This is why this gallery exists?
Well, certainly when I'm able to bring in these professionals that have great stories and experiences to share, but it's also a treat when it's alumni, and when you have alumni that are killing it in photography or killing it in painting, doing murals, doing illustration for companies like Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons. Like that's another weird thing that like as a kid, I was looking at these monster manuals, and one of my students illustrates for current monster manuals.
That's
like
awesome.
That's like a not a full circle thing, but like it's weird. It's weird to be like, you're inspiring young people. Like people are imitating your drawings. People are drawing what you drew. Like,
Yeah.
and to be able to work with these people when they're like 13 or 14 or 15, because I did a stint in middle school and then high school. And some of these students I've had through the years. And when they come back and they get to show, it's like, I'm so proud of them. And it's like even more meaningful.
That's awesome.
You know?
What's it been like working alongside some of these artists as you plan these exhibitions and artist talkbacks?
Sadly, I take it for granted just because I'm just living my life, and it's not like I'm doing it for the gallery at school or having these
Sure.
relationships for a school reason.
Yeah.
But it's a blessing, you know, and I'm privileged that like I have the opportunity to work in a school that has a gallery. I know we were inspired by Nazareth has the Eagle's Nest Gallery, and Parkland has a gallery, and a couple other schools in the Valley do. It was a trend that started up about 15 years ago when budgets were getting cut. They were actually forward thinking of, instead of having the money on a field trip, if we had a specific space that we were bringing the art to the school, it would give a little bit more time to have other faculty, English teachers have written responses to it.
Yeah.
You know, it'd be an opportunity to make it a completely educational experience for more than just a group on a field trip. Working alongside these artists, obviously it feels really great when you're like, hey, buddy, you know, hey, Tom D'Angelo or Chaz Hampton, like, you guys want to show your work at the school? And, you know, I feel like I'm playing show and tell, like, oh, you got to see this guy's stuff. Jesse Shaw, he was an amazing printmaker. Like, bringing stuff in and like being like, hey, check, you know. And then where are they from? And it's like, I would reach out to like the Banana Factory would be a big source for a lot of the artists. And then the colleges, like asking professors at Lafayette, asking professors at Lehigh, asking professors at Muhlenberg and different places to say, hey, would you like to show?
Yeah.
And I kind of see how it's all, it all like stems into other things, and there's an overlap. It's like I've had students that go to Lehigh Carbon Community College, and there's a guy, Jeremy Sight, who's a painter there.
Yeah.
And he showed in our gallery. And, you know, I have a student's like, oh, I'm taking art classes at LTRC. Oh, yeah? Who do you have? And they go, oh, you know, it's funny. We have that guy that he was in our gallery. I'm like, did you tell him that you saw his work? And they're like, oh, I didn't want to say anything. And it's like, oh, what are you talking about? You know, and it's like, so, and then they do end up having the conversation.
Sure.
And it's wonderful to think like, I feel like the kids at Whitehall are getting a leg up. If any of them end up going to any of these Lehigh Valley colleges where I'm trying to make a connection between their staff and showing their work to our students, that it's like a subtle introduction or a subtle, you know, connection that already starts. And that's been really awesome. And that's happened with several different artists.
Sure.
Anthony Smith being one of them too.
Yeah.
It feels great to be able to share that with my students. And it also, the connections, you know, they know I love their work when I'm asking them. I'm not fluffing somebody. It's like, if I'm telling you, I think your work's important and people need to see it. Like, kids need to write about it. Kids need to look at it. They need to digest it.
Yeah.
I certainly hope that they're flattered or see it as a respect that I have for every single one of them.
Absolutely.
You know, and what they bring to the equation.
Yeah.
Because just like me and you, like, we're all variables. So it's like, that's another thing that's rewarding is we have not repeated an artist yet.
Wow.
So, and it's tough because it's like Doug Boehm showed like way back in the day.
Sure.
And it would be so easy to be like, Doug, you ready for another show? And these would be kids. It was over 10 years ago. So like these kids would have been in kindergarten. Like they didn't know. It wouldn't be more the same. But I've been blessed that, and I think we'll probably get to this, that the Lehigh Valley is just so loaded with so much skill and talent and power and like voices that need to be heard and shared.
Absolutely.
And there has not been a shortage yet where I'm like, oh, I don't know who are the 4 people I'm going to ask next year. I just don't know who I'm going to ask. Like, it's more like, oh man, they move in faster than I can keep up with, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I love the Lehigh Valley. I know you love the
I
Lehigh
love
Valley.
this place.
What has been the driving factor prompting you to stay here in the Lehigh Valley?
Love brought me to Penargil and then down to Easton. Unfortunately, that didn't pan out, but the love of art in the Lehigh Valley stayed, and my family's here. My children, are still relatively here. As far as I have one out at Bloomsburg, and she's staying with me now on spring break. But my kids are part of this community. I want to be part of this community. I got my career in this community, so like I'm embedded in that in the Whitehall culture, even though I don't live in Whitehall.
Yeah,
it's a community that shared just as much with me as I have with them. And, getting to see, what happens to these Zephyrs when they get out there, it's great to be part of it. And I'm grateful for it. Like where I grew up in Connecticut was a lot like Easton, Bethlehem area. There was this historic aspect. It was Meriden, Connecticut. It was right between Hartford and New Haven. It's exactly between New York and Boston.
Yeah.
It's along Route 91, 84. It's like major thoroughway, big malls. And it's like, oh, okay, Lehigh Valley's kind of like, okay, you got malls, you got historic stuff. I was totally taken by Easton with the whole Declaration of Independence was read here.
Sure.
Like Trenton and Easton were like the 2 places after Philadelphia that were the first to have it read, and that's kind of interesting to me. And like seeing the history of the architecture and, my sign is Cancer. I am a water sign. I was a swimmer in school. I love the ocean more than anything. But the rivers do it for me. The rivers are enough water to keep me flowing. And I was born on 6/11 down in Philadelphia, and 6/11 is a stone throw from my house. So it's I only moved up the line.
Yeah.
And the arts in Easton and the colleges, I was just at Muhlenberg last week to see Leah Francis had a photography show. Did you see that? I don't know if you saw it.
I haven't seen it yet, but I really plan to.
Yeah,
it
get there
looks incredible.
While it's up, you got to see that. So it's rich Americana.
Yeah,
like it's coal region.
Yeah,
it's Pennsylvania. It's America, but like I see the Pennsylvania part of it.
I saw her work. I believe she had a small exhibition at the Banana Factory about a year ago, and I absolutely loved seeing her work there. So
very powerful.
Really excited to see.
But and she's technically a neighbor to my studio. She lives like 2 blocks from my studio.
Oh,
and
nice.
I see her husband DJ all the time.
Yeah.
But like that venue, Muhlenberg, like the Muhlenberg providing that's what we're doing Thursday night. Yeah. We're going to Muhlenberg and we're gonna go check out some work and I came for this, but I didn't know this was there. And there were these great heads there too. If you get there, this artist Gonzalez, they're incredible sculptures, found object sculptures. But like I have that at Muhlenberg. I have that at Lehigh. I have that at the Painter Gallery at Moravian.
Yeah.
I have that at Lafayette, at the 2 galleries at Lafayette, whether it's the Williams Center at the top or if it's the newer one down at the bottom.
Yeah.
And it's like and then I didn't even say the Allentown Art Museum, but I absolutely love the Allentown Art Museum.
Yeah.
More people need to celebrate that space. There's so much great work in there.
Absolutely.
It's like between the museum and all the college galleries, it's like the Lehigh Valley has it. Like you don't have to, like New York and Philadelphia are awesome. I was born in Philly. I love Philly. I love New York. We just went to Chinese New Year a couple weeks ago. Like love the cities, but I love my valley.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I love I feel like Allentown, Bethlehem, Easton are kind of like siblings, but like kind of.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like Allentown's like the biggest sibling and Easton's the smaller sibling, and they're all competing for like who's the coolest kid. And like, Bethlehem's like, we got these murals. And then Easton's like, well, we got these murals. And then Allentown's like, oh, someone say murals? Let's do murals. And then, oh, you got an arts walk? We'll do an arts walk.
Yeah.
And then it's like, I love the competition because we're winning. We are. If you love art and you don't mind driving 20 minutes, we get to see it all.
Yeah.
And we get to love it all. But Easton, similar to Goldilocks, I feel like that, but that one's just right for me. for me.
Yeah.
Easton's just right.
What are some of your favorite places to go in the Lehigh Valley?
Again, that's a super long list. I mean, if I said what town, but like Allentown Art Museum and Art House, Soft Machine Gallery. Soft Machine Gallery is where it's at right now. Like there's so much great stuff going on there.
Yeah.
Even John, the programming that they're doing, the music that they're doing, the comedy open mics that they're doing, the art that they're having. It's so amazing. And it's like such a treat because it's like not where you'd expect it, as far as like neighborhoods and like, it's like it's really special what they got going on there. Bethlehem, I enjoy the Banana Factory. I have several friends that have studios there, so like it's always like First Friday's a bit of a reunion to be like, the stops you need to make. Say hey to Deb, go say hey to Doug, go say hey to Anthony, and get up there and move around and check it out. And so I really dig that in Bethlehem. And in the Bethlehem House Gallery, same deal. It's like you're going to see some good stuff. It's a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
Back to Easton, Lafayette, Connections Art Gallery has been a staple. It's where I started with Robin Porter, the original owner, and Anthony and Alice have done an amazing job keeping it going and making it blossom and bloom into better things than Robin probably ever dreamt. It's just so amazing. Such a community-rich space.
Absolutely.
Their back courtyard, it's like the social vibe of, I really don't go to their openings until like 8:30, and it's kind of like I miss the whole elbow part where you're bumping and talking, and it's like I get there late enough to be like, all right, who is lollygagging and hanging out? And then you go sit back in one of those chairs in the back and you talk and, do you see this? And what about that? And did you like this? Oh, wow. Did you see their work? Oh, who's that? Who's that just came to town? Well, what's that? Who's doing that? And it's just, it's a great space. Sterner Modern is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful space on Ferry Street that Jonas is keeping going after his late father. The Nurture Nature Center has incredible programming. They celebrate the art, but they also have such a big message about the environment that like it's always educational. It's not just visual. It's like you go there for the visual, but then you get the underlying story behind it. And you grow and learn together, and it refreshes you to think about good ways to be a better human. The restaurants are great. State Cafe is one of my go-to places. I have a lot of art hanging up there. I'm good friends with the owner, and I help him with the decor. The Lafayette Inn or the Lafayette Bar is where it's at for jazz and bingo.
Yeah.
I don't drink, but I find myself there every Tuesday for bingo. And they take good care of me. They pour a good half and half. I asked for club soda and ginger ale with a lemon twist. Tootie takes good care of me. And it's just so much fun. It's just such a fun community.
Yeah.
Oh, the If Museum. Like if you want to weird out and be like, what's that? Like go to the If Museum, check it out. It's a museum. It's not a gallery. It's not for sale. It's to be consumed in your heart, not with your wallet. And they too they have experimental jazz stuff. They have comedy open mics. That is something that's blowing up in the Lehigh Valley right now. I know this is an art podcast, but I'm really proud of all the people showing up and coming out to tell jokes.
Yeah.
And
it's an art form.
It is an art form. It's something that I love. Performance is something that I love, but like, I kind of feel like with everything going on in the world right now, it's like it's like there's a need for laughter. Like there's a need to go out and laugh, and we certainly stream enough from our screens. But seeing someone go up and fail is fantastic. It's like you watch and you're like, oh man, that dude's not hitting it, and it's like, oh, they're trying, but then you start thinking about, oh, they should have said this, or oh, they could have pulled this, and then it's like, this is just so great to be part of, just to watch and be part of.
Absolutely.
You know, and the live music's the same. Black and Blue on Tuesdays. This guy, Bob Noble's a bass player, and he brings in Joe Cerati or John Kimmock and different musicians, Mike Frank. And it's like, I know we talked before about music taste. It hasn't come up on this part yet, but I'm a Deadhead, and they play such a rich variety of their music. And it's like, that's again, like, I never would have thought growing up that I'd be in my 50s and regularly I'd be able to go somewhere, catch a meal, listen to this live music, and it's not a big deal. Like, you're just going and you're having a Cobb salad and some brown-eyed women in red, you know. It's like, oh, so great, you know. It's like, I can't believe it. Like, I can't believe this is regular. Like, I can't believe bingo is regular. I can't believe DJ Brad Scott and dancing until you're like sweating off that third ginger ale, you know. And it's like, this is normal here. Like, this is, and I think to like anyone living in any other community, like, oh, it's too bad. They should be here. Like, I wish they knew. And like, maybe they know and don't. Yeah. I don't know. For me, it's like, this place was built for me. I want to be part of this. I'm like, I'm engaging.
Yeah. The live entertainment in the Valley has seen, I mean, it's always been here, but whether it's the marketing is better or something, there's just been such a resurgence, and like, we see that on the show, and we have some really exciting things that we're going to be coming up with later this season.
The Fun House.
Yeah.
I was just at Start Making Sense. They played 15-year anniversary shows there on Friday and Saturday night. Yeah. I was at their first show at the Secret Art Space 15 years ago, the first time they assembled. And it was like, I remember seeing the jaws dropping in the room. Like, oh, you got to do something with this. And here they are 15 years later. Wow. You know, they just came back from a tour in Australia. They tore up to Boston and Burlington and Vegas. And like, they're just all over the place. Yeah. And I'm so happy for them. And it's like, I remember seeing the Insidious Rays at the Funhouse. Like, I remember all the other bands these guys were in. Yeah. And that was here. And like, they're Peaburg and Easton guys. You know what I mean? It's like, there's like these two families, and you know who you are, Juvnevics, that are like, you know, the Easton family and the Peaburg family. And, and there's a couple Peaburg families, whether it's the Bronze or the Kinsmans. Sure. And it's like, you know, Woodsmoke, Aaron Kinsman's current band, and all these different, like, it's like, oh man, have we been Doug Hawk? It's like, have we been listening to this stuff? Or like, is this who we are? Is this our town? This is our valley.
Oh man.
This is ours.
It's so good. Well, and recently, have you been to a show at Live at the V, at the Flying V?
No, but the Simmers, all of them were drawing students of mine. Nice. But I go and see them at the Funhouse, but I keep seeing them posting that they play there at the V.
Yeah. They have exploded. We did an episode earlier this month at the Ice House, and
that's doing comedy a lot more. Yeah.
And we interviewed so many musicians for a backstage episode, and without fail, probably 75, 80% of them, when asked if they had something they wanted to promote, said, I have a show coming up at Live at the V.
Nice.
Be there. And it was like,
giving the Funhouse a run. Good. We got options.
Yeah. And it was like, throughout everyone we had, probably a Tuesday through Sunday, like sequential dates were given for shows. And it blew my mind. I'm like, wow, this is really active. This is incredible.
That is fantastic.
For sure. Well, throughout the years, you've been in the Lehigh Valley for a while.
I have.
How have you seen the arts community kind of morph and change throughout that time?
I do see changes. I mean, there's some things that stay the same, but change is necessary and change is good. A lot of artists are transient people anyway, whether they're, we were just talking about the strong colleges that all have great art programs in the Lehigh Valley. A lot of their professors, might come in as an adjunct for a short run and then they go on to another school. And then some other art professor comes in and has more to share and new things and new visions. And then even the community itself. I mean, we've lost a lot of great artists in the 25 years that I've been around here, and then a lot of younger artists have shown up and moved here and have arrived. And
sure.
So like those changes are there, but like I know coming out of Kutztown, and really just being hungry, but without a ton of art experience, I knew I want to get involved. So like there was a small group called the Creative Arts Society in Easton, and it was just a small group of hobbyists that painted, and they were like, we're going to have a show in the circle. And I was like, yeah, I want to have a show in the circle. And I made some collages and I sold some collages, and
nice.
I got that feeling that oh wait, all right, so other people might want this too, and then the Arts Community of Easton, ACE, was born, and that there was so many, it seemed like there were more artists around then, but it ebbs and flows really, and when that organization first started, it was, hey, let's have a show at the State Theater. Let's have a show at Connections. And then, oh, okay. And we all identify as artists from this area.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, well, what's this group? It's the Lehigh Art Alliance. What's that group? And then I joined that nonprofit, and they're like, oh, well, we have 2 exhibitions a year, and we exhibit at all these colleges you keep talking about. Mm-hmm. And now, we're a nonprofit and we get sponsors and we have prize money. And it's like, oh, you have like, it's juried with prizes. Oh, okay. And, as a newer artist, I didn't have a huge inventory of work to like have a solo exhibition.
Yeah.
So it was like real comforting to be able to produce work at a rate that you can always have somewhere to show something new. And if you can do it competitively, not that it's really all about that, but when people that you don't know are making a hierarchy through a group of artists that submit, it's rewarding when it works out for you, and when it doesn't, it's motivating too and you got to take everything in stride anyway, because so much is subjective. But these arts groups, the New Arts program out in Kutztown, I mentioned, was a small nonprofit gallery.
Yeah.
They have an annual exhibit in the summertime, a small work show. And the professors that started that, they had international connections. So like when you were showing in that show, you never knew who you'd be showing with.
Sure.
Like there's like a Keith Haring mural on the floor. Philip Glass does performances for them.
Wow.
Like it's like, this is a fantastic space out in Kutztown, and the Lehigh Art Alliance is kind of around Bethlehem, and then, join the Allentown Art Museum and pay attention to what they have going on if they have open calls. And then it's like one thing leads to another, and then you're like, oh, there's this art center down in Cheltenham near Philly, and then join this arts group. And it's like I just joined all the different groups to just pay a nominal due and meet some people.
Yeah.
And it's all been rewarding it always has been from the beginning to last night. It's rewarding. So like it hasn't changed.
Yeah.
The faces that are there, I went to an ACE meeting last night. They had their officer votes, and it was so incredible to see the young people stepping up. I'll butcher the name. I'm so sorry, Daniel, but Daniel DeJuro Gioncelava. There's no way I said that correctly, but the Daniel part, there's a reason I know that name. But he's the new president of ACE, people. If those of you in the arts listen to this podcast, that is going to be pretty exciting.
Yeah.
That is going to be pretty exciting.
Yeah.
And like everybody that stepped up, so many fresh people on their board, and it was exhilarating to see like a changing of the guard in an organization, because like I was the president of the organization for a while back, and I know one of the biggest things to kind of deal with was artists and their egos, as far as some artists that see themselves so established that they don't want to necessarily fraternize with the craftier folk, and some of the craftier artists out there don't necessarily want to hobnob with people that are being elitist and looking down their nose at what someone does that moves them visually. And I always thought the ACE was like this art organization that was going to bridge the gap between the two and be a common space. And I kind of felt like Easton's that city where it's like there's room for everybody.
Yeah.
There's room for hobbyists, and there's room for the fanciest of intellectual thinkers and conceptual ponderers of visual art. And it's just trying to get everybody to get along and share what they know. And what I saw last night, like, it's going to be pretty exciting. I'm looking forward to see what they do as an organization and be part of that. The Lehigh Art Alliance, that place is great too. I mean, I've shown in the Allentown Art Museum several times through their organization. Upstairs, downstairs, everywhere.
Yeah.
I have work up currently at Steel Stacks, which is nice when you go to a rock and roll show there. And hey, that's my painting hanging up right down there. That's cool, and giving a little shout out, to the artists that they have a modern show going on right now.
Yeah.
That's, if I wasn't in that organization, they wouldn't have said, "Hey, let's put your work up for people to see when they're going to the theater or the performances or anything that's going on there." That's part of getting involved. Like, which I really recommend to everybody out there. You got to show up.
Yeah.
And you got to be available.
Yeah.
And joining those organizations is really what built the relationships that I have with the artists that I invite to show at the school, at my day job. It's those relationships that I have at those meetings and those experiences that I bring into the classroom that are real and authentic, so that I'm not just talking about art from a book or art from a slide, but like, no, this is art from someone who lives in Bethlehem. No, this is art from someone that lives in Nazareth.
Yeah.
No, this person graduated here. You didn't know Bart Cooper? Yeah, you might know some of his cousins. Yeah, yep, that's their cousin. Yep. And it's like, oh, all right, and it's, I think you asked earlier about how does it work, like these artists that and how does it work with the bringing them into the school. It's all so interwoven. What I have in content for my day job, is completely tied to what I do.
Yeah.
In after 3.
Yeah.
Everything I do after 3 informs everything I do before 3.
Yeah.
And everything I do before 3, like I think you asked me once before about what do I get out of it, or what do the kids teach me?
Yeah.
I don't know how many of my colleagues have to explain the elements and principles of art and design regularly.
Yeah.
Like regularly. Like, is it time to ask these criticism questions again? Yes, today we're describing the work. Let's talk about who made it, where it's from, when it was made.
Sure.
Oh, wait, today we're talking about interpreting the work. What does it remind you of? What did the artist do to get you to think of those thoughts and ideas? Can you think of a metaphor for the work that you're seeing? Do you think the artist intended that? Is there a message or a deeper meaning? Do you think this work is special? Do you think this is important? What is it in the work that you see that helps you define it as important or special? And then the kids will say, well, I wrote no. I wrote no, it's not important. What does that mean? Well, that means I don't have to answer the second question because I said no. And I'm like, no, I'm sorry. You still have to answer the second question. They're like, what do you mean? I said no. That's okay. It's totally okay that you do not think that work is important or special. I don't know if I find it to be important or special. But what is it, or what does it take for a work of art to be important or special?
To be considered in that way.
Where did it fall short? Tell me, write it down. Write down the thing that fell short. And then it's like, oh, all right. And then he reluctantly, start to expound. And then it's like, it really wasn't about the art.
Yeah.
It was about you. And do you understand that when we do art criticism, it's not it is what it is.
Yeah.
It's never what it is. It's never what it is. If the art's done well, it's not what it is because it's a depiction of something that's triggering the thoughts of the maker.
Yeah.
That you're getting as a responder, as an audience.
Yeah.
What you're seeing into it. It's not what it is. I mean, it's Magritte. It's this is not a pipe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Again, I say that. They don't know what I mean.
Sure.
And I'm like, you never saw that pipe thing with the French? But talking to another adult, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is not a pipe. This is a painting of a pipe.
Yep.
So good art done well is never what it is.
It is. It's not. It is.
It's not what it's a representation of what it is.
Yeah.
And then art that's done poorly, that's not what it is either. So it's never what it is.
Yeah. I mean, just a few moments ago, you talked about how interconnected all of this is. And this is the second time we're recording this episode.
Yeah, we could do it 3 or 4.
Yeah, so many conversations we've had, some studio visits.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make it any easier to weave together these questions.
Oh no! Well, I'm a bit of a stray cat, so it's like as my students, they know my triggers. They know what to say to get me off task, or like, oh, just say you like this, and he'll start going, and But hey, at least I can get going.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry if I get excited and off topic or off tangent or.
Well, but even when we're not, I mean, there's so many of these huge topics. Like we've been talking for a while now. We haven't even gotten to your personal art practice yet.
I know. I'm sorry.
And we haven't even talked about music yet. And both of these things are so pertinent to you. And music has been brought up time and time again throughout so far. And like, all of these things, we need to talk about them. I want to talk about them.
You have to edit this down to something.
But it's so interconnected that it is. We're getting there.
We are.
We're getting there. And everything we've talked about so far is hugely important.
If you have to do a part 2, I understand.
Well, let's touch on music.
Okay.
We've brought up music so many times. We've talked about live performance.
What more do you want to
brought up
hear?
being a deadhead. You brought up the influence of your students and keeping you up to date on everything.
They're musicians. Kyle Brokenshire, you're one of the best out there, brother.
Well, I wanna know, where do you find yourself finding music recommendations the most?
I do love my Spotify. Originally it would be friends. Like originally, like OG, I could remember. Shout out to my buddy Jeff McKay. He moved back down to Philly. He's got great taste. And at the time of like before even streaming, it was hard drives, and it was like, oh wait, we can share this much on a hard drive. And it would be like, dude, I have a hard drive for you. All right, I got a hard drive for you. and then you'd share, and then you'd just listen, and it'd be like, wow, is this what's happening?
Yeah.
And currently though, some of the artists, Todd Frankenfield has a really great ear, and Michael Francis, his studio is right next to me. And a lot of times I get there and they're already there, so I'm listening to what they're listening to. If it's Todd's on one side and Michael's on the other, Todd is a little more, I want to say jazzy and weird, but more ambient. Like it's like, just start painting right away while this is on. Like just get to the painting, because Todd's got the right music on right now for being quiet and talking to the art, But then Francis will be playing stuff, and it's like, who's this? That sounds like Neil Young, but it's a woman. What? And he's like, oh yeah, they're from Philly. Flory, you ever hear of Flory? And I'm like, no. And he's like, yeah, put it on your Spotify. And then it's like, next thing you know, I'm listening to all this different Flory stuff, and they're from Philly. And then I'm listening to Flory, but then all this I think it's MJ Linderman comes on, and I'm like, oh, all right. Well, I didn't know that. And then it's like, I guess the algorithm is like, well, if you like this, you might like that. So if you find some friends that have a little bit of weird taste, they can bring you into an orbit that's like, okay. Now I listen to DIY and like college radio.
Yeah.
So I'm already, I mean, the most commercial really is like XPN, which is not commercial, but like of the college radio stations, they're kind of a little more corporate now than back in the day. The DJs on DIY give me fresh stuff. Arnie Lichten, there's so many great radio shows to listen to locally that do give us some fresh stuff. That's not always all the old same stuff. So that's where I get my music. The other art weirdo friends I have is where I get that.
What role would you say that music plays in your life? Like generally?
I'm wound up, so like I need music on most of the time. And I've identified with music almost as much as art. I mean, I don't see myself as a musician. I play guitar and mandolin, and I used to do more open mics and like socially play, but there's a guitar in my classroom that students have played and I play on occasion and make up songs about what we're doing and stuff. But music is just, I love it. I love it I love playing it. I love listening to it. I love painting to it. And it's really all over the place as to say, what do you play when you paint? It's like, because like I said with Todd's music, sometimes the ambient jazzy stuff is nice to like get to a place. I've been listening to a lot of early Herbie Hancock, like late 60s, early 70s Herbie Hancock. And I didn't know any of this music in my youth. And I was like, who? What's this? And so like that's more the jazz end. Sometimes I'm in a mood for the Grateful Dead. Sometimes I'm in a mood for, if I want to go edgier, more like Pavement or Steve Malkmus solo work. That's the vibe usually.
Nice.
That's usually what's up.
Well, I think it's finally time we dive into your art practice.
Art. Yep. Pictures. I love making pictures.
So when would you say that you officially started your studio art practice? Did that?
It started with that show coming out of college. Like, and now granted, that was in an apartment and not a studio. But even right after college, I had like in my first apartment with my girlfriend, there was like an extra bedroom that I called the studio.
Yeah.
And it was a little bit like, who are you calling that extra bedroom a studio? And it's like, well, because that's where I make my paintings. And like, and then some of the civilian friends I have would be like, what do you mean? You need a room to make your paintings? Like, why don't you just make them in the kitchen? And it's like, because it's like different having a room where you're like, no, this is what happens in here. Kind of like the bathroom, you know?
Yeah.
It's a special place for certain things, you know? And the studio is kind of like that, you know?
It really is.
Yeah. And so I had one in our first apartment. And then when we moved to Easton, we had a nice little old place that had a 2-car garage, and I converted that into my studio. Then I really felt like, oh, look at me. I really got space now. And I can invite people over to talk about work and look at work. And this is where it's at. So my work started to grow having that space. And then Lafayette College invited me to have studio space in their studios and be a visiting artist. And they gave me a key to the building. It was like, what? And they're like, you can have this whole area. And I'm like, I can. And they put me up and they were like, we just want you to talk to the students about what you're doing and why you're doing what you're doing. And I'm like, okay, I'll do that. So then I had a studio space there. And then that led to me applying for a studio at the Banana Factory, and I want to say 2005, and maybe four or five. And so then I had a studio there, and then that was like, oh, wow, I'm part of a community now. It's not just a studio here or in a college. It's like in a place with other artists, and there's First Fridays. And it was, again, like the relationships and connectedness. And after the Banana Factory, I did build a house, and there was a studio in the house after the Banana Factory. And that really served its purpose. After I left that home and moved back to Easton, I had a space on Bank Street just before the public market was born, right in the back of the alley there, behind Oak, the restaurant, like at the end where the new parking garage is. I had a studio loft space. It was like a 300 square foot studio and then a 300 square foot living quarters. And that was fantastic. That got me connected with the city even more. I was getting more involved with ACE. I was showing with Brick and Mortar. Brick and Mortar had a gallery space right downtown in the Circle next to Pearly Baker's. They put a big community show together called Boom. That was this big monstrous exhibition right in the Circle. Everything just started to grow from that studio. I then moved closer to Lafayette up on College Hill, and I had a studio in my home there. And it was really getting too busy, too tight for the amount of work that was happening. And that's when just the universe said, these guys over on Butler Street have something going on. Go see if they have any room over there. And I went over and met Clint and Bert, and they said, yeah, we want you to be one of the first artists down here in the next section downstairs. And I said, I can be loud. And they said, you can be loud. And I said, I can make a mess. And they said, you can make a mess. And I said, oh, and yeah, so this is where it's at. And it's been 3+ years. And that place is, I can't express how grateful I am to be surrounded by that great group of people.
That's at 1120.
It is such a great studio space, 1120. I mean, I did the Banana Factory thing. I did some different art spaces. This is like such a weird, natural experience. Like, it's like there's no rules. It's like very casual and special just for us. You know, I think part of it not being open to the public, like, is kind of one of the things that makes it a little more exclusive. But none of us there, we didn't all get studios there to be seen. It was like, we're there to work. And
it's a big difference.
It is. It really is. And the only distraction is another artist. Like, there isn't somebody popping through going, oh, what do you do? It's like, no, it's more like, hey, do you need a break? Do you need a break? Yeah, let's sit down and and vent for a couple minutes and then get back to work.
Yeah, understandable. So how would you describe your artwork generally? Kind of like from where you started to where you are now.
Well, I love it all. So I love drawing. I saw myself as a drawer more than a painter, but I love it all. And I love building things, and I love making things. And when I was making those first 2 pieces for graduation, they were a little bit of everything. And I liked that. And it kind of made me feel like you didn't have to nail it down and just say this is what it was. And at the time, someone was like, yeah, you just say your work is mixed media because it's a mix of everything. And then it's like, okay. And then, oh my God, everything is mixed media. And then if you say you're a collage artist, and people, oh yeah, like you decoupage stuff on chairs. And it's like, well, no, I don't glue stuff on chairs, but I do glue stuff. And so then it's like, where's the name, or what are you going to call it? And then sometimes I'll say a painter, and because I end up painting on top of everything anyway. So then it's like, well, you're essentially a painter, but you're just painting on top of the stuff you built. And then I'm an organized hoarder, so I don't know if you could be a hoarder and be organized. I think if you're organized, you're a collector. If it's in a, they're in organized piles and bins and things, so it's not too bad. But like, I collect a lot of stuff, like, and a lot of visual things that are meaningful to me, or and they could be abstract, like it could be numbers, it could be logos, it could be graphic stuff. I grew up working in a grocery store. My first year teaching, I wasn't full time. I was working at Giant at night in the produce department, and I found myself like taking the number stickers on the sides of the boxes of bananas and lettuce and like putting them in my apron, and I'd come home from work and I'd have all these like remnants of coding and things that were like only important to the person knowing where they're supposed to put the box to go where in the freezer for this, for the delivery guy in the truck to know what's the code. This code is irrelevant to anyone after this, you know? And to me, I found that interesting. Like I found that interesting that like everything has its time and place, and what does it trigger? You know, we talked about our criticism before, like what thoughts come to mind when you see this work? Like essentially all these things that I see as garbage that like people are throwing away or whatever, I would see as like, I want to use that. I want to put that in there. I want this to go with that. And, you know, kind of like talking about the work of Gabriel Rico, it's like making those equations, but with objects of like, well, how does this work with this? And then it is an equation. Yeah. And it is about balance, and it is about math, and it is about like, you know, is this heavy here? Is it, you know, where is there more content here? And it's like, that's all I do is I build content on two-dimensional surfaces for people to respond to. And I'm the first responder because I'm responding in real time as I'm making it. And then I got to a point where it was like, well, I don't want to be this guy that's just cutting everything out of these magazines, and don't use those magazines because then you'll just be identified as the guy that's always using those magazines. And then it's like, all right, well then I got to vary what I'm using. And then, well, what am I trying to say? And am I talking about myself? Am I referencing things that are going to be appropriate for someone that was born in the 70s? Or is this an 80s thing? Or is this a 90s thing? And I'm a school teacher. So like, I'm also dealing with kids that are dealing with things today. So like TikTok is like, I do not have a TikTok account, but what I'm saying is like current parts of our visual culture, screen time. You know, I haven't done it yet, but like yesterday I was thinking about wanting to put something in a piece that says something like, it's just going to say, click share now, and the third person really loves your painting. You know, like something that's totally off you know, that we see in all these reels and all these streaming cultures. And you know, how does the current world, I get all these bots of these very attractive women that want to follow my Instagram, but it's odd that their profile is not so much like the invite. And it's like I started screenshotting and saving those, and I'm like fake fans, and like I want to kind of like, they love my art, they want to see my art, you know? And it's like, no, they don't. Like, but it's funny because it's like just a bot of what is the crap that's coming out, you know, or what is the part of our current cultural visual world, and tying that into the stuff that's triggering thoughts of the 80s and 90s or you know, or 70s or history. Yeah, I don't have a very big family. I got one cousin that I'm really that I'm close to, but the rest it didn't really happen. I think my family moved a lot. You know, aunts and uncles were seen on great occasion. It wasn't like a regular normal thing. Sure. And I've got one brother and one sister, and neither of them procreated, so my kids don't have cousins. And it's just it's a small, tight, you know, group that I exist in as far as my blood family. And I think my art has some longing in it for that connectedness, you know, and maybe that's the drive to be part of the equation, because it's like family is like the first equation. Yeah, you know. Yeah. So that really is strong in my work. Subtle things influence my current work. The current work that I've been making for the last 2 years, and I really don't see a time that I'm going to stop doing it this way, because the fire's still burning deep in my mind for what's going on right now. Yeah. But there's a series that I've been working on that all stemmed from a lesson I was teaching in a graphic design class. And it was about, I was teaching about the yin yang as a symbol or an icon. And in this lesson about the history of the symbol, we learned about that it wasn't so much about the black and the white. It wasn't so much about the polarity of everything, whether it be the sun, the moon, male, female, yin yang, positive, negative, but that S curve that's between the two, and that there was a name for that, and that the name for that was the way, and that was the path of living, and that you had to have 1 foot in the white and 1 foot in the black on your journey, and that life has to be balanced, and you have to see the interconnectedness or the interdependence of each side in order to exist. Mm-hmm. And when we're going over this lesson, it was the day that Kyle Rittenhouse got acquitted, and I was a yin to his yang, because I did not agree with that situation. If anyone follows those stories, and I was trying to understand that I have to live in the way, like I have to live with accepting both sides of things, like I easily lean one way or another, but like in order to have sanity and stability, there's like a necessity to coexist somewhere in the middle. Yeah. And I came to my studio that night after school, and I'm looking at this painting I'm working on, and I've been into cubes lately, or at least the last 2 years, because it was a way to get more three-dimensional from the work that I'd made in the past that was more of an XY axis. And I'm looking at this cube that's in the middle of this collage painting, and I thought about masking off this large shaped area on the left and masking off this large shaped area on the right, so that only the back plane and the bottom plane of the cube were showing. And this cube is floating over the collaged ephemeral stuff that I put down on a panel. And it was like, I don't want to say subliminal, but like the yin yang was not obvious. Sure. Like, you'd have to point it out to say that, oh, this black and this white are opposites, and it's not on a circle. So it also is like deviating from the icon. Yeah. And the part that exists between the black and the white is the collage stuff that I'm making naturally on my own already. Mm-hmm. So I kind of felt like visually I'm represented between the black and the white. Yeah, that and in some paintings there's a little more black, and some paintings there's a little more white, because it's never perfect, you know. It's never what it is, you know. And I've been that has been motivating me so much so that like there's no shortage of work yet to be produced. It's just the only thing that determines the output is time. Yeah. And working full time as a teacher, it's been so rosy. This whole podcast has been so rosy about how positive it is to be a teacher and how it influences my work and the relationships with different artists and kids in life. But, you know, if I wasn't doing that, I'd have more time to paint. Sure. Unless I was working somewhere else to pay the mortgage and pay for the cars and the kids and, you know, life itself. So I am grateful that it is all tied together, but it doesn't award me the most amount of time to produce large bodies of expression. Sure. So I have to be limited with my career as far as my output. But I work hard, and I have a lot going on, and I have probably at any one time, you know, 6 to 8 pieces in progress. Yeah. So it's not that I can focus on one thing and work on it until it's finished. It's more like juggling. You finish these 2 and now there's 5 left, and you just started 3 other panels, so like there's still 8, you know. Yeah. But these 6 are further along than the 2 that just got started. And then you got an idea. You want to put in that if you share this, the third person's this, then I guess you got something else to do. Yep. But I'm looking forward to. I just look forward to painting. I just look forward to making, and I am blessed that the experiences I've had in the 25 years in the Valley, that I know when I'm ready to have a full exhibition ready to go, that I know the avenues that are available to me to represent and exhibit, and that's a gift that a younger version of me did not have.
Sure.
So there's no stress. I'll accept life on life's terms, and everything will occur when it's supposed to occur. And if it's not right now, then it wasn't supposed to happen right now.
Yeah.
My work, it's mixed media collage for the people that want to try to go to the common denominator. But that's what I'm inspired by. Putting a bunch of things together. I was trying to say earlier about what I pick, could define my style.
Sure.
One of the things that I kind of did to avoid that or make it more personal, and with the age of technology, an iPhone 13 takes a pretty good picture. And I love I am not a photographer. Like, I do not have the skill sets. I do not know the technology, but I use it more as a tool to capture something I'm trying to bring back to the studio. So like, if I go to, one of my places to be in heaven is the Saylorsburg Flea Market. And I could walk through there and look at all the crap and be like, oh, I need that for a collage. Oh, I need that. Oh, this is going to be this. And that was like a great spot to be for inspiration.
Yeah.
Well, get out your phone and start taking pictures. And then I'm taking pictures of like these accidental still lifes that are unintended still lifes, I'd call them, because like they weren't setting it up on the table to look good. They were arranging it to sell it. And they weren't thinking about, I want this here to be next to this. And it's like, yeah, but if you look and you capture and you're like, oh, when are you going to see this statue of this next to this toy, next to this hard hat, next to this horse?
Yeah.
And then you take a picture of it and then you're like, wow, that's a nice collection of crap to make sense out of. Let's throw that down on the board and make an equation. Well, we're going to subtract this, and then we're going to add this from your bin. And then you know what we need? We need to paint a cube on top of this, because it's really not about this anyway.
Yeah.
It isn't what it is, it never is. And that's what it is just figuring that out, and like the process and being able to experience that myself. It's very selfish, but like it's what I need to do as a person. It's what I need to do as a human. It's how I identify.
You've mentioned a bit about these collage elements and that the cubes and the paintings kind of go over it. Tell me a little bit about the ephemera that you like to use. Like, what are you pulling from in terms of some of these?
Well, an easy one right now, or an obvious one, is graffiti and garbage, which is kind of odd. I mean, graffiti's not odd. It's culture, it's street art. You know. I know there's graffiti haters, but I also know there's graffiti lovers.
Sure.
I appreciate it. And like, I went down to a friend, Beth Ann, had a show down at Gross McLeaf in Philadelphia. I was going down to see her exhibition, and before, I don't know if I was early, but before I went in, I ended up ducking down a couple alleys, like off of Walnut Street down there. And I was just like, it wasn't great graffiti, but it was like, look at these alleys, like just the dumpsters and the palettes and the colors and there is some like paper stencil stuff, but then there's some just tags and I even think poorly done graffiti tags are interesting to me, because like I teach graphic design, so I talk about typography, and it's like, well, what about the human hand? And like, look at and how quick someone had to do this, and how you didn't see that they wrote their name sideways, you just didn't recognize the letters, and how esoteric it was, and see, you had almost like coding. And, so I went and I took a lot of those pictures, and then that's what I would blow up and lay down first. And then I would build my collages over those photographs. So like if it was a flea market photo shoot or a graffiti alley photo shoot. And then the irony of like, you know, I sold a painting to a collector last year that was one of these cube ones with the graffiti. And there's like a waste management dumpster like right in the middle. And it's like, who would want a waste management dumpster in the middle of a painting in their living room? Like art's like, you would think theoretically the art for the majority of collecting, you're buying art that's, I hope, making you feel good.
Sure.
I know art does everything. It's meant for all emotions, but if you're going to live with it, I'm hoping that you get joy out of it. So it's like ironic that like, can I take something so lowbrow and elevate it to something worthy to display in your home with pride? And it's like, if you can do that, then you're really never making it is what it is. Like, you know, that's the transformation I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Which I think most artists are looking for, that transformation. This is not a pipe. This is paint on canvas. I transformed it to something else. And Kasuth and other, you know, deeper thinking artists out there, they deal with these plays on words. Like, what is language? What is, you know, what is a word as a symbol, as a, you know, and the more descriptive you get, you know, there's pluses to being vague. And then you'll reach more people with something vague, but you'll get, the more specific you are, the more isolating it is. And it's like that in literature. It's like that in art. It's like that in music. You know, and having these relationships with artists from the Valley helps me grow as an artist, to ask myself these questions. You know, we have these debates. I hear things like, you know, it's not the artist's job to get you to like their work. It's the artist's job to make work. Now, if you like it, that's awesome.
Sure.
If you connect to that person's voice, that's awesome. But, you know, Flory isn't trying to be the number one song on the radio.
Sure.
You know, Linderman's not trying to sell out the Lincoln Center.
Yeah.
Like, everyone's not trying to be the most sold postcard at the MoMA. Like, I want my art to be for the audience that wants it. Like, I'm not trying to convince an audience to like it.
Sure.
I just want to be like, I know you're out there. I've heard it before. And I know because I like the kind of work. I'm inspired by other artists too. Like, I know when I see Todd's work, you know, when I see Arta's work, when I see Al's work, there's things that it's like, oh, we're having a conversation.
Yeah.
Like you know, and then same time, someone else who might be a figurative work, or Adriano Farinella, like his cloud paintings are so outstanding. They are so far from what I do, you know, but that doesn't mean I don't love it. Like, I absolutely love it.
Sure.
That's one of the gifts of being the art teacher, is it's like there's room for everything on my plate.
Yeah, absolutely. In a number of your works, I've seen corporate imagery, and especially things like McDonald's and Burger King and a lot of these fast food corporate images.
Well, sadly, I've had a relationship with fast food that hasn't been the greatest. And so some of that is an internal inner demon thing working out. And I've gratefully been away from the fast food industry. But at the same time, in teaching graphic design, some of them got some good marketing, and that ba-da-ba-ba-ba is pretty good. And maybe I'll be the first one on record saying it, but like, I think the You Rule is genius for Burger King.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It's like, I catch myself singing that jingle. And then like, if you're ending it with You Rule, like, that's pretty nice. That's pretty smart. That's from some pretty smart advertising.
It really is.
You're complimenting your audience that you're trying to get, you know, and it's like, I find that stuff fascinating. So, you know, I had, there was a stint when I was studying art ed where I considered for a semester going into advertising and graphic design. And I don't know if it was that grocery store experience of like squaring down the aisles and building the end caps and being inundated with logos and colors and bounty and, whatever, the cereal aisle. I mean, as an artist, like whose favorite aisle as a kid is like, look at all this color and these cartoon characters and, the adult cereals don't have a drawing on them.
Yeah.
Look at, and it's like, that was, I'm so taken by visual stimula and it's just, so like, that's going to show up in my work. Like, I love pop art. I'm a sucker for it. I did the first artist that probably spoke to me in a personal way was a guy named Joseph Cornell. And he would make mixed media pieces in like little boxes and drawers. They were more three-dimensional sculpture and not necessarily flat. But that's what really turned me on the most. Finding value in something that was disregarded and making it valuable. Like, I feel like that's magic. Like, that's special. If you can do that, that's special. And then, just because of curriculum, they were like, yeah, you did art history 1, you did art history 2. You also need to take art since 1950. And it's like, okay. And then that was like, this is Robert Rauschenberg. And he likes to make stuff with all the trash that he found in New York. And it was like, he's making stuff with signs and presidents and the moon landing and current events and color. You like color, remember? Remember the cereal? And it's like, yeah, I do. Yeah, I do love color. And then it was like Jasper Johns and language and communication and text. And it was like, oh, these guys are great. I think they like each other too. And then it was like, oh, Liechtenstein. Oh, there's the comics coming back. And then Warhol. And it's like, wait a minute, Warhol did comics too before he was doing all the label stuff. And it's like, yeah. And oh, I love these people. I love this stuff. Yeah. I love all of it. And so that influenced my early work huge, like pop art. And, I don't know. It's just, it's quick to like, I don't want to say quick to get a response, but like, it's a world we all live in. It's like, how do you not speak to that?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I'm more motivated by that. I mean, I love plein air painting, but when I do it for myself. Like, I'll get the easel out and I'll get the paints out and I'll go for a drive and no one will see that painting.
Sure.
I'll go to figure drawing at Lafayette. They have Thursday night figure drawing, and I'll go there with like random. I'll dig in my studio stuff and I'll find like 5 pieces of pastel that are like the broken ones that didn't make it back into a box. And I'll be like, okay, this is what you got, a limited palette. This is all you're working with tonight. I guess if you want it lighter, it has to be green because you have the light green pastel. And I guess it's going to be red if it's darker because you have the red pastel. And that's the darkest one of the 4 you brought. And it's like, oh, well, that's not right. And like, that doesn't look like the model at all. But then next thing you know, it's like I'm looking at shapes and I'm looking at forms and I'm not thinking about all the other stuff that I'm thinking about all day. I'm not thinking about my cable bill. I'm not thinking about my car registration. I'm not thinking about the oil change. I'm not even thinking about work. Like, I'm not even thinking about school. Like, I am just looking at a figure.
Yeah.
And I am making marks and I am responding to the physical world that's right in front of me.
Because at the end of the day, that piece is not the model.
Oh, no. It's never what it is. It's never what it is. But those experiences, they're meditative. They're not art.
Yeah.
They're not paintings to look at.
Sure.
They're things for me to go through. And the stuff that I'm making in my studio that I'm encouraging people to invest in, well, that's me too. But that's more of the song I sing.
Yeah.
And if you've been following the all overness of this podcast, I think it's very representative of the work.
Yeah.
You're gonna go somewhere if you want to stick around.
Sure.
And if you're like, hey, I saw it, I'm moving on. That's cool too.
Sure.
That's totally cool too. It's for whoever, whatever, the same lure don't work for every fish.
Yeah. You've talked a little bit about being an organized collector. And
I've been.
I'd love to hear about how you bring that into the naming conventions of your pieces.
Well, they're different. I mean, everything in the work visually, I'm trying to evoke a response. And I know from just even colleagues' practices to art history that a title carries a lot of weight. And, sometimes you might look at some non-objective piece and it has this really heavy title that's going to like take you somewhere to try to recontextualize what it is that you're looking at. And I feel like that's a whole nother avenue of the work that I don't want to say I'm not interested in, but I don't want to rely on the title to take you anywhere. I want you to get there on your own. Like I set up the road, but you're in control of looking at it, how you're going to look at it. And I feel like by giving it a title with a name that's so specific, I'm leading. And I'd rather lead with color than lead with words. And so I got this idea of, well, did I finish this today? Well, what's today? All right, is today the 10th? All right, well then it's 031024 because it's just the date. And then am I working on a set or am I working on an individual piece? Well, if I finish 3 of them today, well, then the last number will be 1 and if it's the first one, and the last number will be 2 if it's the second one, and then so on and so forth. Now, the odds are most of my pieces end with a 1 because most of my pieces are the only one I finished that day. But everything else, you start to see the coding. You start to see it, and who really sees it is my computer because it's great in the file folder because everything is arranged chronologically just by the numerics that I'm using. So it's really great. I was looking for an older piece that I was referencing from 2003, and just the other day I was going through my file folders, and I have them all by year, and it was like, oh, I haven't done this in a long time. And it was like, wow, it was kind of neat to see the large icon pictures of all the things from that year. And then right away, it was like triggering memories and thoughts of like, oh, that was when this was going. Oh, that was when my daughter was born. Oh, that's when I went from the middle school to the high school. Oh, that was when I was at the banana factory because it had this thing in it. And that's when this person was in my life.
Makes sense.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, I want to use some of the time that we have left to discuss a specific piece of yours.
Yes.
The one that you submitted is titled 0706-211. And I know you're familiar with our show, and we love to do art description to key the audience into what we're talking about. So for the audience, how would you describe this piece?
Okay, this is, again, using that word mixed media, just implying that you're looking at a lot of stuff. You're seeing paper collage stuff. You're seeing paint. You're seeing some like physical things like screening, fabric. You're seeing a lot of texture. There's areas of a very flat color, and then there's areas of muted, weathered, worn, maybe even sanded paint areas of paint. There are snippets of things. In this particular piece that we're looking at, it's a very large, it's 2 large rectangular cubes. There's a blue one that's a little smaller and a golden one that it takes up the majority of the picture plane. The picture looks divided into sections. So there's almost like the formatting of a comic book page. There are like panels that connect to one another that kind of build a larger visual image. This particular piece has a fraction of a word. It was taken from a sign from Giant that it was just something was on special. And it's the letters SPEC are the only letters that are in the work. They are vertically aligned, so it's not logical. It's not set up like you're meant to read it. So it's really, I think, subliminal of things that aren't necessary. Like it's like background because you're not trying to read it. It's not communicating a message. All it is an S, a P, an E, and a C, and it's also cropped. So like you don't even see the full bottom of the E. That could be an F. You're just assuming it's an E because SPFC makes less sense. So like your brain works, and I'm trying to get that brain to do stuff, and that's happening here. The other little remnants are things from like encyclopedias, like little illustrations of flowers, some blueprints. One of my favorite pages from my memory, going through comic books, I used to love, like on the back page, there was like, sell this many magazines and you win this, you could pick from these prizes. And do you want a racetrack? Do you want walkie-talkies? Do you want x-ray specs? Do you want a whoopee cushion? You know, and it looks like, it almost like, if I don't have any tattoos, but if I'd like to get sleeves of all the things, the prizes that you could have got if you sold the most magazines, you know, like the little turntable, or, you know, what are the different things that the resistor radio, you know, the video game. There's a little snippet. Anyone that's it's of our generation, you know, late 70s, 80s, knows the comic books I'm talking about, knows that back page. The inside page probably tried to get you sea monkeys, you know, but the back, I use that a lot in my collage. It triggers great memories to me. It's a time I didn't have to know about all the stuff going on in the world. It was me and my Legos. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was a pretty good time.
Yeah.
It was a pretty good time when it's just you and your Legos. So those are the things that show up in the work, stuff that's going to trigger memories from youth, memories from suburbia, because that's who I am. Like I can't speak to those other experiences, nor should I.
Yeah.
The work, it's a bunch of color. You know, this work that we're referencing is current enough that it's got that black-white polarity stuff that we talked about earlier. There's a large black shape on the right side of this particular painting, and the white is on the left in this particular painting. I feel like the cubes are symbolic of obstacles that we have, or blocks that we have in front of us. The cubes that I paint are always irregular wired frames of cubes, meaning that none of the planes are opaque or solid. Most of the time, it's like you're seeing through the cube to the collage work that's painted or collected underneath it. So there's like layering that occurs. Earlier in the podcast, I mentioned an XY axis, again, from comics and Legos. I think I built everything on an X axis, like lining up imagery left to right, and then it would go up and down the way a book is read. But during COVID, I was working on some pieces, and I just, you know, from teaching the elements of art, I knew I had to get some diagonals in there. Like even the collage stuff that I use, I'm not cutting a figure out and gluing it on. I'm not cutting out any specific object and gluing it on. I'm using a rectilinear image and gluing it on. So that rectilinear image is next to another rectilinear image, which is next to another rectilinear image. It's never like, it's not fabricated like a mythological creature, like a pet. It's not like take the wings and glue it on the horse. Like I'm never taking parts of something to build it. I don't know if I'm making it clear in my articulation. I think you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's this XY axis, this grid
Yeah.
is part of it. So when I got to the diagonals, it was like, okay, this is starting to get dimensional. This is starting to lift off. It's not so much of it is about surface that this changed that somehow.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've asked this to a few artists, and I love the variance in responses. But if someone were looking at this work, what's a question that you would love for them to be asking either you or themselves about it?
I don't know if I could articulate that. I kind of feel like a lot of it is intuition. And I know what I like, and I know that I don't always understand what I like. So it's like, well, if you don't get it, then why do you like it? How many songs I could tell you I love, and I don't know the words. And it's like, well, if you love that song, why don't you know the words? I don't know. I don't need, it's not the words that I'm in love with.
Yeah.
It's the song I'm in love with. And it's like, well, then why do you like that song? And it's like, oh, well, because of how it makes me feel.
Yeah.
And I feel like looking at art is the same. Like, it's great to have that little paragraph that could tell you the story about the deeper thing of what it's about.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, and I tell this to my students, the aboutness is really personal. Like, it's about what it's about to you.
Yeah.
And as far as like what question would I want them to ask me, I'd like them to ask me how they should pay for it. Do I accept check, cash, Bitcoin,
Sure.
Venmo? I do have a Venmo account. We could probably put that on the podcast if you want. But like joking, but not joking. And as far as a question that I think they should have for themselves might be, why do you like this so much? Or even, why do you hate this? Or, it's so intuitive. It's so like, I'd like to hear why someone likes something.
Sure.
Sadly, because this is our second go around, that we can't fake the authenticity. You're laughing because you know what I'm going to bring up.
Yeah.
So, for the listeners out there, this particular piece, during our first go around, we had a conversation about this piece, and Ben shared with me that it reminds him of a film called They Live. And he says, did you ever see They Live? And I just started laughing because I pull up my sweatshirt and I'm wearing a T-shirt from the movie that my girlfriend bought me, because we both love the movie, and she thought I'd get a kick out of it, and she bought me that shirt. And it was just like so mind-blowing in our conversation of like, how are you wearing that shirt while we're talking about this work? And what is it about this work that makes you think of that movie?
Yeah.
And I think we touched on it a couple earlier ways when we were talking about, like, if anyone's a fan of that movie or Roddy Piper, there's something subliminal in the movie.
Yeah.
That there's messages and they're hidden under billboards and advertising. And you need special glasses to see it. Maybe you need special glasses to see my work. But our conversation about this particular piece, I'm speaking for you.
Sure.
There's a blue shirt. There's a textile. There's like a very little bit, a corner of a young man's shoulder, and he's wearing a blue shirt with like a tan grid on it. It's like a plaid shirt. And Ben says, well, it's the shirt from the movie. And then I went back and looked at the movie. I'm like, oh my God, he's totally right. Like that dude's wearing the same shirt that's in this collage. And it's like, it has nothing to do with the movie. But that's art. Like,
yeah.
Like the idea that a simple pattern can trigger a thought of a movie from a time that has nothing to do with this.
Yeah.
That's art. Like that's because of your experience, because of what you saw. It's in your equation.
Yeah. And there was so much. I mean, I totally wish that we had that recording.
Yeah, we can't
that authenticity.
I did not
there,
wear that shirt today.
But like, there was so much about that piece that I looked at it, and the the kerning of the letters and the typography of that SPEC reminded me so much of the Obey poster from that.
Right.
And the black and the white and the way that the rectangular cubes are acting almost as those see-through glasses, and then seeing that, I'm like, it makes sense.
You're not the first person that said that my work reminded them of that movie.
Really?
Honest to God.
Wow.
Honest to God, you're not the first person. But the first person that I'm wearing the T-shirt at the time that they tell me.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was cool enough.
And it was just, it was such a cool moment. And so I think a good question that you brought up and that you had stated again is having people ask themselves, what does this work mean to me? Like, why do I like this? Why is this special? And for me, like, making connections to things are so huge. And seeing this piece, why I love it is because it reminds me of the first time I watched They Live.
And it doesn't even have to mean that you liked They Live.
Sure.
But if that time in your life was positive, joyful, who you were with when you saw that movie. Was it a date? Was it friends?
I was in class.
Like, well, what school were you at?
I went to film school.
Oh, well, that's a lot. That makes it okay.
I went to Baylor University, went to film school, and we were watching it in my directing class.
Well, then that's pretty good.
It was a double feature with the movie Roar.
I'm not familiar.
It is a wild movie.
I'm going to write that down.
It's not particularly great.
No, but I'd like to see it in context to this one.
Yeah, but it was filmed with something like 60 live lions.
Oh.
And a bunch of people got hurt on the set. And our film professor was like, there are times when authenticity is being chased and it's just stupid. And this is one of the cases where the authenticity of them wanting to have all of these lions for this movie and really get authentic shots of these lions chasing these people was not a good set environment.
Context.
Yeah. And that context was so huge. But I don't know. That class was a joy. Thinking back on that class was just...
School's pretty cool.
Yeah. And
Art's
seeing
pretty
that,
cool.
Yeah. Seeing that piece just had all of those memories flood back.
Awesome.
Yeah. There's so much more that we could talk about, but I think we're going to have to start to wind down the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Danny, where can people find your work?
I have work, like I said, it's Steel Stacks for the next, probably till May. I don't know when the podcast will be out, but if you're checking stuff out, maybe you'll remember. State Cafe in Easton has some stuff. Connections Art Gallery in Easton carries my stuff. I have stuff at the next Baum School of Art auction that benefits the art programs at the Baum School of Art this spring. I'm also going to be in a show after that at the Baum School because there's an invitational of 1120 artists. So our little enclave of art makers in Easton are going to be featured out in Allentown. And I'm looking forward for an opportunity at the Goggle Works is having an international show coming up that I'm looking forward to as well.
That's awesome. And where can people find you online?
You can find me at dannymoyer.artist on my Instagram. That's where I pretty much push the art scene. Not TikToking yet. No need to tweet. I talk enough in real time. And Facebook, you could look me up on Facebook if you're down with Facebook, but that's more like if you want to see my kids too.
Well, you mentioned it earlier. If people want to buy a piece and they want to pay with Venmo,
oh yeah,
how can they pay you?
Yeah, Venmo. I'm pretty sure it's on my Instagram.
Oh, sweet.
Pretty sure it will be after this if it's not. But come out to 1120. That's
Absolutely.
the space. And again, I don't know when this is actually going to get broadcast, but man, if you can get there by April 27th, we're having an open house. If it's after April 27th, and you'll go, I remember going to that on April 27th. That was awesome. A lot of good times are going to be had that night.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
And on again.
Yeah. No, for real, though. I mean, I've been following you guys and I've been enjoying your podcast. Abby Roscoe, so many of your art, so many of the people you featured, Abby showed in our gallery at school. The list is so long, but like you guys are really doing a great job of covering all aspects of it for the Valley, like not just the visual arts, but everything that you've been doing has been such a positive part of the Lehigh Valley. I really mean it.
Thank you so much.
You bet.
This episode's opportunity of the week is for the ongoing figure drawing sessions every Thursday at the William Visual Arts Building. Thank you to Lafayette College for making this possible. Sessions are from 6 to 8:45 p.m. and is free for all. However, tips for the model are greatly appreciated, although never required. The doors unlock at 5:45 p.m. and relock at 7:30 p.m. Hope to see you there.
Thanks for tuning in to the Lehigh Valley Arts Podcast. Don't forget to like the podcast, leave us a review, and follow us on both social media and streaming services at Lehigh Valley Arts Podcast.